Well, as you can see, boys and girls, Elmer really wanted to come to class today. He just paraded right on in here. So I told him, okay, Elmer, today we will read one of your books. We're going to read Elmer and the Rainbow, and then we're going to paint our very own rainbow. So I hope you enjoy today's lesson. Elmer, the patchwork elephant, was in a cave, sheltering from a storm. With him were other elephants and birds. Thunder and lightning are exciting, said Elmer, and after the storm, we might see a rainbow. When the storm had stopped, Elmer and the birds went outside. Elmer felt drops on his head. Oh, he said, it's still raining. Perhaps it's the rainbow crying, said a bird. It's come out too soon and lost its colors. Look! In the sky was a pale shape. A rainbow without colors, said Elmer. That's awful. We must do something. I'll give it my colors. To do that, you'll have to find where it touches the ground, said a bird. Nobody knows where that is. Well, what are we waiting for, said Elmer. Let's start searching. You go that way, I'll go this. What are you looking for, Elmer? Called Lion. The end of the rainbow, said Elmer. Have you seen it? Which end? Asked Lion. Either end, said Elmer. The rainbow's lost its colors. I can give it mine if we can find the end. A rainbow without colors? That is serious, said Tiger. Come on, Lion. We'd better search. You too, rabbits. We'll roar when we find it, said Lion. A little later, Elmer met Giraffe. Elmer, she said, there's something strange in the sky. That's the rainbow, said Elmer, and he told her about the lost colors. Can you see where it touches the ground? Giraffe stretched very high. No, I can't, she said. What will happen to you, Elmer, if you give it your colors? She asked, but Elmer was already on his way to get the elephants. The elephants were still in the cave. We're not coming out with that thing in the sky, they said. But when Elmer explained the problem, the elephants were keen to help. What about Elmer? What happens if he gives away his colors? Asked an elephant. I suppose he'll be like us, said his friend. Better that than a colorless rainbow. Elmer was with the monkeys when the birds returned. No luck so far, they said. We'll keep looking. Nobody can find the end of the rainbow, said a monkey, but it will be fun to try. By the time Elmer arrived at the river, everyone was looking for the rainbow. Hello, fish, he called. I don't suppose you know where the rainbow starts, do you? Usually at the waterfall, said a fish, but today there's some pale thing there. That's the rainbow, said Elmer. Come on, to the waterfall. Sure enough, a colorless rainbow was coming from the waterfall. The search was over. Elmer, the fish, and the crocodiles called loudly to the other animals. Then, without waiting, Elmer went behind the waterfall. By the time the other animals arrived, Elmer was out of sight. Colors gradually began to appear in the rainbow. Hooray! cheered the animals. But what about Elmer? Whispered an elephant. As if in answer, Elmer appeared from behind the waterfall. He still had his colors. The animals cheered again. But Elmer, said an elephant, you gave your colors to the rainbow. How can you still have them? Elmer chuckled. Some things you can give and not lose any. Things like happiness or love or my colors. On the way home, Tiger said, I wondered if the rainbow would be patchwork. Elmer grinned. Don't even think about it, said Lion. We have enough trouble with a patchwork elephant. This time, Elmer laughed out loud. I just love that story because Elmer says, there are some things that you can give and not run out of, like love. And I just think that's such a great message. You can never run out of love. And in the Bible, God says in the book of 1 Corinthians, it says, let all that you do be done in love. So that is something that I think we really need to remember and focus on, that no matter what we're doing, that we need to be able to show love throughout what we're doing. For today's project, you will need watercolor paint, a piece of watercolor paper, water, a brush, and a paper towel. If you don't have watercolor paint, that is okay. Just use markers and follow along, or crayons, or whatever you have available to you, and follow along. I'm going to teach today's lesson in a very specific way. So before we get started, I want to show you why I'm going to teach it that way. So do not follow right now. But anyways, so I'm painting right now, and I am going to paint my next rainbow color right next to the first rainbow color. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad yet. All's well, feels good, right? And I'm going to paint my third rainbow color in. So I don't know if you can see exactly what's happening, but the colors are starting to blend together. So when you have wet paint, and you're using watercolor paint, and you put wet watercolor paint next to wet watercolor paint, guess what happens? It bleeds together and creates this ugly mess. So you don't want to do that. Follow today's video so that you can paint a watercolor rainbow without your colors blending together. Step 1, we're going to paint the grass. Okay, so I'm going to use my smaller brush of the two brushes. If you have two brushes, use your smaller brush. The first thing I'm doing is I am going to put several drops of water into my green paint, and I'm going to swirl, swirl, swirl to get that green paint ready to go, because if you're using pan watercolors, which is the type that I'm using, they're going to start out dry, and you have to add water to them in order to make them wet. Then I'm going to just put little tiny lines at the bottom there so that it looks like grass. Now whenever it seems like it's starting to run out of paint, that just means you need to go back over, get a little more water and a little more paint, and keep on painting. It's nice to have a variance though in color of the grass because it helps it look a little bit more realistic. So I go back, I get a little more paint, and I keep on painting. Step 2, paint purple. So next I put water into my purple, and I swirled, 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 and then I am now doing a purple upside down U that is going to be the start of our rainbow. Now I think I want my line a little bit thicker, so I'm going to go back over that a little bit more. Step 3, skip a space and paint blue. Next I'm going to put a few drops of water in my blue paint and swirl, 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 and then I am going to put it on my paper. Now be careful here. Watch what I do first and then you do it. See how I'm leaving a space there between purple and blue? That will be very important to keep our colors from bleeding together like they did in that first example that I showed you. So remember, between purple and blue, we are leaving a space. Does anybody know what color is going to go into that space? If you guess the color indigo, you are right. Now, the rest of you out there that did not guess the color indigo, you're probably like, what is indigo? It's not near as common as violet, purple, or blue, but indigo is kind of a mix between purple and blue. Step 4, skip a space and paint yellow. Okay, now I'm going back to my water. I'm going to clean my brush off, and I'm going to wet yellow now. Now the reason I had to clean my brush really good is, remember, if we accidentally get blue into our yellow, what does it make? Green. We don't want green yet, so we're going to clean our brush really good, put water into yellow, swirl, 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 and then we paint the yellow. But remember, we skip a space. We're skipping that space for green. So we skip a little bit of space and paint that yellow in above blue. Step 5, skip a space and paint red. So I'm going to again get some water and put it in my red and swirl, swirl, swirl until my paint is mixed up really nice. And then I'm going to skip a space to leave space for orange, and I'm going to paint red, which will be our last color on the outside of the rainbow. So we won't add any more to the outside. We'll start working on those spaces that we skipped after this. Step 6, paint indigo between the purple and blue. So I'm going to again grab some water and swirl, swirl, swirl my paint until it is ready to paint on there. Now indigo is something that a lot of us don't have in our paint sets, and so what you'll see me do is I will put a little bit of a blue that I have on the paper, and then I'll go back over it with a little bit of violet, because indigo is a mix between a dark blue and a dark violet, and so it is an actual color that has characteristics of both blue and violet. Step 7, paint green. Green is going to go between the blue and the yellow. So again, I get some water, I swirl, swirl, swirl to get my paint ready, and then I'm going to take my green color over and put it between the blue and the yellow. Step 8, paint orange between yellow and red. So I have my orange paint ready already, and I'm painting it between the yellow and the red. This is the last color that goes in our rainbow, and then after this we're going to work on our sky. Before we officially move on to our next step, look at our paint water. It is gross. So I'm going to take that over to the sink and switch that out and get some clean water. That's much better. Now if you have a large brush, take your large brush and paint your sky with your water. Now if you've ever done this before, you know what I'm doing. But if you've never done this before, you're probably like, what? Paint the sky with clear water? So this is a technique called wet on wet. We're going to wet our paper, and we're going to use wet paint and a wet brush, and we're going to just kind of drop in colors of blue throughout the sky, and it will create a nice airy sky type feeling to it. You can get really specific and make cloud shapes, or you can just kind of drop in the paint, which is what I'll do, and it'll create a fun looking sky. Now, how much water might be something that you're wondering. You want to make sure that you can see a shininess of water on the surface of the paper, but not so much water that it is pooling into little pools of water. And the other suggestion is make sure you're working slowly around your rainbow and around your grass, because if your wet brush goes into any of those areas, you will end up spreading that out, and you don't want to do that. So work slowly and add water all over where you want your sky. Now, like I said, you're just going to take a blue and just kind of drop it in throughout your sky, and you can move that paint a little bit on that wet surface and make the sky look a little bit more like what you would like. If you got a little bit too much water on the surface, you can use your brush to soak up a little bit of the water and then wipe it off on your paper towel. If that doesn't work for you because your brush doesn't absorb it, you can lift your paper and tilt it to the side and kind of gather some of the water at the edges. But make sure not to be dabbing your paper towel onto your paper too much, because that can create big white marks on your paper. So just work around the edges to pull extra water away. Well, that concludes our rainbow. I hope you had fun today, and thanks for creating with me.